Welcome back to another Power Rankings. This is Shoop Sports with your Week 6 preview, the start of our week. We didn't see a daily fantasy video again. Apologize for that. Life got in the way. I made one lineup. It failed miserably. I don't even want to talk about it. We're going to talk about it this week. We're getting a lot more clarity in the teams at the top and the teams at the bottom, as you're going to see in today's video. So I'm pretty confident with our top 10 and our bottom 8. And then you have the 11 through 24, which is just one gigantic, jumbled mess. Teams are just beating each other in this bracket. I have zero clue what to make of it, but I'm going to try my best today. But we're going to split this up. So we're going to go over actually opposite order. A lot of fire trucks today outside. Good old Morristown, New Jersey. Anyway, we're going to go over our top 10 first, and we're going to go over our bottom 8. And then we're going to try and make sense of that mess. So let's start with the top 10, starting at number 10 with the Kansas City Chiefs. And people see the Chiefs as 2 and 3, and they're putting them in the middle of their power rankings. Sure, their defense is bad, but it's just not knowing football. You're telling me that a team with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, no matter how bad this defense is, how many injuries they've suffered, with what the rest of the league has shown us, there's no way this team still isn't top 10. They're going to get Chris Jones and Charvarius Ward back from injury soon. And they've played some pretty hard teams on their schedule. Let's see, they've lost to the Ravens and the Bills. Who else did they lose to? The Chargers. 3 other teams that you will see in the top 10. And they also beat the Browns as well as the Eagles. But forget them. But what I'm saying is, Chiefs have had a hard schedule so far, and they're a team that's targeted by other teams because they're the top dog in the league right now. At least they have been for the past 2 years. So teams are going to be playing their best against them. 2 and 3. It's surprising, but it's not really it doesn't really indicate how good this team is. This team will be much better once they get their good defensive players back. They're going to make the playoffs, and they'll probably make noise in the playoffs. So don't freak out too much about the 2 and 3 record. Still a top 10 team. The Dallas Cowboys are coming at number 9, looking a bit shaky against the Giants, and then they'd proceed to injure the entire Giants team, and didn't look so shaky anymore. The defense is still pretty good. Trayvon Diggs with another interception, starting to cement himself as a star in the league, at least getting towards that range for all the publicity he's getting. And the offense looks as sharp as ever. It's really going to be a matter of, can they beat other contending teams? Yes, they beat the Chargers, but that game was full of BS. I want to see how they play against. Real quick, let's take a look. Who do Cowboys have coming up on their schedule that could really define how good this team can be? Okay, they're going to be in New England this weekend, which is always a tough game. Then they're going to be home against the Broncos, which will be a good test to see how they do against an elite defense. And then biggest game of all of them is going to be when they go on the road to play the Chiefs a week before Thanksgiving. And I don't think they're going to win that game, but we'll see if they remain competitive. But the defense improving is a big factor into why they're a top 10 team this year. Number 8, the Green Bay Packers. They're 4-1. Aaron Rodgers seems to have dusted off all that criticism he got week 1. But the issues with the rest of this team are still there. You've got Jair Alexander out for an extended period, And now you can add Kevin King to that list, who also got hurt this past weekend. And it seemed like they were just whiffing on opportunities, trying to give that game to the Bengals. Bengals were trying to give it back, of course. But there's plenty of concerns about this offensive line and this defense on being able to stop. Because you got to remember, the Packers have gotten their wins against the Lions, the Steelers, most recently the Bengals. How are they going to fare against better competition? Again, like the Cowboys will have to wait and see, but big matchup against the Bears. I think it's a game they should win. I think that the Bears' biggest weakness is their pass protection, and since the Packers have some pretty good edge rushers, then it should be something they should be able to take advantage of. We'll see. I expect the Packers to win that game and take full control of the NFC North. Number 7, the Baltimore Ravens. What an impressive comeback by Lamar Jackson. But what I really took away from that game was how important it is to have a good coach, such as John Harbaugh. The Colts were dominating on defense the entire night. They pretty much were going to win that game, and then all of a sudden the injuries at corner started popping up. You had Rock Yassin go out, and then number 34, Hughes, he got hurt, and all of a sudden they're down to a couple rookie corners with Xavier Rhodes. And Xavier Rhodes was banged up going into the game. What did the Ravens do? They just start airing it out. Before they were trying to establish the run game, and then it wasn't working. And now the corners get hurt. Just run a bunch of go routes by them. Let's just throw it over the top of their heads. And the Colts could not defend anymore. Sure, and their offense wasn't even that bad, but once the Ravens start putting the pedal to the metal, it was impossible to come back from. So good in-game adjustment from John Harbaugh, and the Ravens I can't wait for them to play the Browns. It's going to be a really exciting game. I think it's going to be a while from now, unfortunately, but we'll check back on that. Speaking of the Browns, number 6, we gotta acknowledge the Chargers and Cowboys game for being a little rigged. So you gotta do the same for this game, because there are a few bogus calls on the Browns, especially that pass interference that kind of changed the landscape of the game. But but the difference is in that Chargers-Cowboys contest, it was a tightly defensive contest. This was an offensive shootout, which I was not expecting. I was expecting these two defenses to kind of go at it with each other. The big thing that I take away from this game is the injuries the Browns suffered. Already down a couple offensive linemen. Now Jack Conklin gets hurt, and you got Myles Garrett getting banged up. Jadeveon Clowney was already hurt. Hopefully these injuries don't linger, because the Browns' schedule coming up. Let's see. Now we can find out when they play the Ravens, because I would love to watch that game. So they play the Cardinals this weekend. If they're down most of their key guys, that's going to be a loss for them. And then they got the Broncos, Steelers, Bengals coming up. So good defensive team on a Thursday night, nonetheless. So even less time for the injured players to recover. And then 2 big divisional games. So Browns have some key games coming up. So they'll have to really make sure they can get their guys healthy. I would also heavily criticize Baker Mayfield recently. Turns out he has a bad shoulder. So maybe that explains his struggles. But as a leader, if you're hurt, then you gotta either recover or just don't let that be an excuse. I know I'm not an NFL player, but this is what these guys get paid to do. If you're hurt, you can't play well, don't play. Simple enough. But he played much better this weekend. I will say that. getting off topic here. Okay, the top five I think are pretty clear cut. Uh, the Chargers definitely cemented themselves as a top five team. I've had them on that border all year. Was close to putting them there week one, but this offense is absolutely explosive, and this defense is able to make plays, even though they were kind of gashed. I think it was just the tempo of that game that led to the amount of points scored. But this Chargers offense is clicking on all cylinders. It's going to be hard to stop all year. And really, even though I think the Chiefs will make the playoffs still, their odds of them winning the division are getting lower and lower the more the Chargers look like this complete team that they are. So excited for the Chargers going forward. I bumped the Cardinals down to number 4. So thinking about my rankings, as you'll see later, I don't want to base my rankings off of who won head-to-head. So like I did that last week with the Rams. The Cardinals beat the Rams, therefore the Cardinals are better than the Rams. You do that enough and you look at all these matchups, then you just start to get confused in your head. So I really look at, on paper, if I had all 32 teams in the league, who's beating who on like every 50 out of 100 times or every 100 times, how often are they winning? Now the Cardinals, they're undefeated. They're going to be the consensus number 1 among most power rankings because they're undefeated. But are they the best team? Does their record indicate that? No, I think the 3 teams that I'm about to mention are more complete and would win more games on a neutral field. You can argue that the Rams were not taking the Cardinals seriously when they lost to them. Not taking them seriously, but focusing more on the Seahawks, that Thursday night game, which we'll talk about in a bit. The Cardinals offense, which looked to be dominant, did not look so dominant against the 49ers, but they were still good enough to come out with a win. That's how you know that their record is not a fluke. But would I take them against the top 3 teams right now? Probably not. Starting with the Rams at number 3. Again, I already explained the reasons why I think that score could have been a fluke. Simply enough, this with Sean McVay and Matt Stafford, it's going to take multiple injuries for this Rams team to ever not be competitive throughout the season. They've got studs on defense and offense, well coached, and now they got the Giants coming up, and we're going to talk about the Giants in a bit. That game is going to be the blowout of the week. So, as a Giants fan, hooray. But we'll continue to see the Rams dominate. The Bucs are going to come in at number 2 this week. The Bucs still have issues in their secondary, which Miami couldn't take advantage of because their offensive line sucks. Frankly, their whole team sucks. And their wide receivers with Devontae Parker and Will Fuller out are very substandard. All they had was rookie Jalen Waddle and Preston Williams, who was a healthy scratch a few weeks prior. But it's still a good sign to see that the Bucs are a high-powered offense. They can take advantage of these matchups like they usually do. It's going to be hard all year to keep up this offense unless you have a coach that can limit the Bucs enough to exploit that horrible pass defense. Number 1, I have the Buffalo Bills, and how can you not? The only way you couldn't is if you value record more, then you'd have the Cardinals. But you have to respect the Bills' road win over the Chiefs and everything that they've done over the past few weeks. Their only loss this season was week 1 to the Steelers, which looks more and more confusing every single week. Maybe Josh Allen had some first game jitters or something. But dominant on offense, dominant on defense. What more can you ask for? They're the unquestioned number 1 team. Look at the statistics, the eye test. The playoffs are going to run through the Bills in the AFC this year, most likely. Now we're going to go to our bottom 8. Starting with number 32. How can you not put the Jacksonville Jaguars here? They're 0-5. They got blown out again. And they didn't even respect their own coach. Is this team going to win a game? Are they going to go winless? It's very possible. Trevor Lawrence is he's doing well. He's improving each week. But are they going to get up for their coach? I really could see Urban Meyer. When is the Jags bye? We're going to take a quick look. See when the Jaguars bye week is. So the Jaguars have our bye week, week 7. So they played Dolphins in London this week. Can we see Urban Meyer get canned soon? I think he should, if the Jaguars care anything about saving face, because right now they're at 21 straight losses. It's already a record, and it's only going to keep getting worse, because if you can't beat Miami, then they got to play Seattle, Buffalo, Indianapolis, San Francisco. They're not winning any of those games. Then they play Atlanta, winnable game. Then they play the Rams, Titans, not winning either of those either. And then they finish up with Houston, the Jets, the Patriots, and the Colts. So you could, by that point, sure, they could beat Houston, the Jets. They'll probably win one of those games. Even New England. But then you're you're already 0-13 at that point. There's just not much hope in Jacksonville this year. Sorry about that. Speaking of no hope, the New York Jets. So, how did it feel, New York, to win those 2 meaningless games last year? Because, you could have had Trevor. Instead, you got Zach Wilson, who looked better last week. And then he goes and puts up this stinker of a game against the Falcons, who have a horrible defense. There's no excuse for it. They're assured maybe they're coming off an emotional win, but it's the NFL. You gotta be able to move on. And they should have looked at this game like, we could win this game. We can be 2-3, and maybe make a little bit of noise and get some momentum going. But no, they came out flat. They were also vastly outplayed and outgained by the Falcons. Embarrassing loss, and don't really see, if the Jets can't win these kinds of games, then they have no hope against even remotely good defenses. The Texans are there at number 30, and I still think the Texans have the worst roster in the NFL, but they continue to be competitive, which means that their coaching has been on point this year. You got a guy named Chris Moore going off against the Patriots. I really don't know what happened this game. I don't know how the Patriots, how a Bill Belichick coach team could look this bad against the Texans, but here we are. But I'm still going with my prediction. The Texans win week 1 and don't win the rest of the year. It's already coming to fruition. I don't think Davis Mills is going to look like the way he did every weekend this weekend. Number 29, I have the Detroit Lions, who don't deserve their 0-5 record. They've played much better than that, and they've kept games close all year, but they're just so snake-bitten that you got to wonder if it's because of how young and inexperienced this roster is, if they're even capable of closing games, period. They even had a game given to them this time. Usually it's the opposite way around. Usually the Lions are giving games away, like they did in the Ravens game. But this time, they got a fumble on what should have been stopped forward progress, return for a touchdown, and then they make the 2. They're up by 1 with 30 seconds left. It's a gift, and then it's not like a week ago, literally a week ago, you're playing the Ravens, and you lose the game because you can't play prevent defense with 30 seconds left. They make the same mistakes. It's like, I love Dan Campbell's coaching. He clearly cares about his team and loves getting his guys up, but it's simple things like that. Prevent Hail Mary defense at the end of games to prevent field goals. It's ridiculous. I don't know how they keep doing it. The Giants are 28, but if we're talking about this week only, they'll probably be at 32 because their entire offense got hurt in the Cowboys game. Daniel Jones, out, concussion. Saquon Barkley's ankle looks like a swollen tennis ball. And then you got Kenny Galladay, who's out again. I don't know why they gave an injury-prone receiver such a big deal, but here we are, and they're paying for it. And now they play the Rams. It is going to be like 40-0, something ridiculous like that. Mike Glennon has no chance. The Dolphins at 27. I touched on it a little bit in the Buccaneers recap. The Dolphins were facing an injury-ravaged secondary in Tampa Bay and put up 17 points. That shows you the mismatch that the Dolphins O-line had versus the Bucs D-line. Couldn't block it all. Jacoby Brissett couldn't get anything off. This is not a good football team. I've seen enough from them to know that. And even because when Tua comes back, what difference is it really going to make? Tua is going to be under the same pressure, and he's going to have to deal with the same defense on the other side. So there's that. The Falcons are at 26, another win. So I guess it's a good sign if you can take advantage of your crappy opponents, but also not a good sign because you are ruining your draft positioning. You have a 30-something-year-old Matt Ryan, clearly declining. You need to replace him soon, and you're going to be picking from the 8 or 9 spot, and you're not going to be able to do that, and you're going to be stuck in purgatory for even longer. If I were the Falcons, I would see maybe there's a major QB injury or something that happens next week or so, but maybe look at a team that's lacking that quarterback. Maybe like Washington. Maybe they'd rather have Taylor Heineke as a backup and need some leadership before the end of the year because who knows when Ryan Fitzpatrick's coming back. Falcons should get some value from Matt Ryan while he's winning games because the season's gonna go on. He's gonna be older. Older quarterbacks play worse later into the year, and his value is going to continue to go down. So try to do something about it, Falcons. I know he's your franchise, but your franchise is doing nothing right now. And my last team in the bottom 8 is the Washington football team. At 25, what happened to the defense? I've been saying it every week, and week after week, they're giving up 30-plus points. This time to the Saints, who are as inconsistent as ever, but they were doing simple things such as completing, or not simple things such as completing Hail Marys and making it look simple against this Washington team. It's a bad sign, but funny enough, the offense at least looks good. So the rules have switched this year, but in this week NFC East, the Washington is going to get demolished, especially by teams like the Cowboys, who can run it up on them. Okay, there we go. Bottom 8 are done. Top 10 are done. Now we have this giant ball of teams from 11 to 24 that I don't know how to sort out, but we're going to try it anyway. So, like I said, you line up all 32 teams. And you say, how often will this team beat this team, and so forth and so forth. So when I look at the Seahawks, missing Russell Wilson, what kind of team is this now? Geno Smith comes in. He's a serviceable starter, but he's playing behind an injured offensive line. And he's not much of a deep threat. So he'll be targeting DK Metcalf a lot, but Tyler Lockett's not going to get the same space that he used to and all the big plays that he's been doing. So this offense won't be as explosive. They're going to any semblance of a run game that the Seahawks had is now going to be focused in on, and the defense is still bad. This is the 24th team in the NFL right now until Russell Wilson comes back. Russell Wilson makes magic. Seahawks fans haven't seen how this team plays in a long time, and that without Russell Wilson, and now that teams have time to game plan for Geno, he's not going to look as good as he did in the second half of that Thursday night game. Number 23, the Las Vegas Raiders. Tough times for them. I'm not going to go over whether the firing was justified or not, but I will say this. The Raiders were a laughingstock in the league for a long time before they had that one good season. Carr broke his leg. They didn't win a game in the playoffs, and then Gruden comes in. And they haven't won a playoff game, but they've at least been opponents take him a little more seriously than they used to. And Gruden wasn't always given the best talent and whatever. But the bottom line is now you have the whole rest of the season. After starting 3-0, the Raiders problems are getting exposed, specifically on that offensive line, as Derek Carr was absolutely rattled all game against that Chicago front. And now they're going into Denver, and they're probably going to lose that game, and it's just going to spiral downward from there with no real leadership from the coaching. It's not looking good. In a stacked AFC West and AFC overall, the Raiders are looking like a surefire last place finish. Bears at 22, who just beat the Raiders, still have problems on offense, but at least it's good to see that defense, which looked like it was struggling early in the year, is kind of stepping up, and they can take advantage of bad offensive lines, which is good news for their ability to keep games close, but this is far from a playoff team. But I would love to see Justin Fields' development, and maybe in the offseason what kind of offensive talent they add to make this team a little more explosive. Oh, and they need a new coach too. Forgot about that. Number 21, the Minnesota Vikings. 1 week the Vikings are about to beat the Cardinals on a last-second field goal. And the next one now they needed a last-second field goal to beat the Lions. And they're a 10-point favorite against a Lions team missing multiple offensive linemen and had multiple more go down in the game, including Frank Ragnow, their center. And they almost lost that game. Sure, it was on a bogus call with forward progress that should have been stopped, but they should have won that game handily. They let the Lions hang around. I really don't trust Kirk Cousins for a full season. I think he put up some great numbers in the month of September. He was looking good, but can you do it consistently? I haven't seen it yet. I still don't trust it, especially if behind that offensive line. God, there's a lot of bad offensive lines in this league. Same with secondaries. The Eagles at number 20 have been getting destroyed on defense all year until this weekend, where after the first 3 quarters of play where they were getting outgained, but the Panthers continuously shot themselves in the foot. The Eagles make some nice plays on defense, and Jalen Hurts is talented enough to will his team to victory. Good win for the Eagles. Going forward, I still think this defense will be exposed more, but I like the way Jalen Hurts is playing. Sure, he's not showing accuracy issues, but he's displaying his rushing ability is hard to stop, and his leadership is unquestioned. So the Eagles will be another one of those like 6-11, 7-10 average teams. They'll beat up on bad teams and keep it close to some good teams, but overall I don't see them really making too much noise in playoff hunt. The Panthers are who we thought they were at number 19. Now at 3-2. I mentioned before that they're going to be very overrated because they have a lot of winnable games, and lo and behold, they're not even winning their winnable games. And the good news, though, is that they play the Vikings coming up, and McCaffrey is most likely returning. They need him as a Sam Darnold safety net, because now you got Sam Darnold just chucking it up to his receivers, hoping for a prayer. Thinking maybe he's still seeing ghosts or something. But yeah, the Panthers defense is still pretty good, but they were never a top 10 team. And them and the Raiders, whoever were putting them in the top 10, were overreacting to record and not really looking at who they were playing and how they were playing. Moving on from that, the Patriots moved down a few spots to number 18 for putting up a stinker against the Texans. Of course, they still won, but it really should not have been that close in the first place. In fact, Texans were actually leading pretty significantly for a good portion of the game before the Patriots realized, wait, the Texans can't play defense. We're just going to run it down the field on them. Again, let's see Mac Jones continue to develop, and maybe Bill Belichick won't get drunk before the game and put up a better game plan next time. Whatever. It's a win-to-win column. We'll see how the Patriots fare against the Cowboys. The Steelers are at 17, representing one of the most confusing teams in the entire league. The Steelers go up against the Packers, good team, but not such a good defense, and Ben Roethlisberger can't throw more than a 1 yard pass. And then he comes out firing and looks like he's never had any issues at all against the Broncos. Of course, the Steelers nearly blew that game, but their defense was good enough to keep them in it. They're getting some of their defensive players back from injury, which is a good thing as well. But I don't have faith that Ben Roethlisberger's arm is going to hold up throughout the year. Now he lost Juju for the season. They're clearly, I want to say third fiddle, but even the Bengals are better at this point. So the Steelers are still looking like the worst team in the AFC North. They're going to have to win some of those rivalry games to change my opinion on that. The Colts are a number 6 team, which is a bit of a surprise to you guys because they're 1-4. But they had that game in hand on the road versus the Ravens. It was very impressive. And then their corners started going down. The Ravens adjusted, and it was over from there. Very quickly, too. But you saw the potential of this defense, and Carson Wentz played fairly well. He lost a fumble in the first quarter, which was not a good look. But other than that, he didn't throw any interceptions, no turnovers in the second half. So I liked his play, and just because they're 1-4 does not mean that they won't be competitive in the rest of their games during the season. So the Colts' record's a little bit deceiving. I still think they'll be competitive throughout the year as long as they don't look at their record and get too down on themselves. The 49ers coming at 15, putting up a surprisingly good defensive effort against the Cardinals. We knew coming into the year that the 49ers would be a good defensive team, but they lost some key starters, mainly in their secondary. That made it seem like the Cardinals would run the score up on them with Kyler and his talented receiving core. But Kyler was smothered, especially on the ground. Couldn't really do much. Lost me my fantasy game this week. Thank you, Kyler, but not really your fault. But at the end of the day, Trey Lance was not experienced enough as a passer to put points on the board himself. He showed some nice grit with those rushing plays. He almost had a rushing touchdown. It was stopped inches short by a great play by Isaiah Simmons. So the 49ers now go into their bye week and hope to get Jimmy G healthy because Trey Lance does not look ready yet. The Bengals are in at number 14, looking pretty good against the Packers, but Joe Burrow continues to get kind of beat up. He had multiple injuries, including a concussion, a throat contusion, and he must have had something wrong with his head because that interception he threw in overtime must have been a miscommunication, but I don't know what he was doing. Again, that game went back and forth. They kept trying to give it to each other, but this Bengals offense is a lot better than we expected. Their offensive line is holding up a lot better. It looks like that week 2 game against the Bears seemed like just a really off day, and hopefully going forward that the Bengals have more prolific offensive days. And now the Bengals got the Lions and the Jets coming up. So they could be 5-2 and look like a real threat in the division. Number 13. See, this is how bad this middle of the pack is sorting it out. Because I got the Titans at number 13. But the Titans' defense is absolutely horrific. But they have to be up here because they're the most competent team in their division right now. They're winning games in their division, if anything. So they're going to get a home playoff game. And their offense is still explosive enough that they can keep up with their poor defensive efforts. So will the Titans make the playoffs? Looks like almost a shoo-in at this point, unless the Colts can start making up some ground. But they're going to get exposed by whatever AFC West team gets that 5 seed, or even AFC North team gets that 5 seed. Bottom line. So this number 12 team's a little surprising. I have the New Orleans Saints. But statistically, they're one of the better teams in the NFL. They have above average offense and defense. It's just that when they're really good, they're really good, and when they're really bad, they're really bad. And you can count on that kind of the whole season. It seems kind of like Jameis Winston plays up to his competition and plays down, or even plays down to a worse competition, or even better. He likes to win in odd weeks and lose in even weeks. So whoever the Saints are playing this weekend, don't bet on them. Last but not least, the number 11 Denver Broncos. I still have them up here because I still think their defense is one of the best in the league, despite some of the injuries that they've had. And competent roster from top to bottom. I've talked about how bad a lot of these offensive lines are. I highlight how good some of these offensive lines are, like the Broncos, allowing Teddy Bridgewater to be competent. But yeah, another loss this weekend. Steelers being weird again, came out motivated, but I still think that the Broncos have the defensive capability to keep up with teams like the Chargers, and they're playing the Raiders this week. They're going to put themselves in a different class from the Raiders, and that is my prediction. So hopefully I sorted that out well enough. How we're going to use these rankings going forward is if these 11 through 24 teams are playing each other, I'm taking the underdog, straight up, because it's the gap between the Broncos at 11, the Seahawks at 24, it's big, but it's not as big as you think it would be. So I think those teams are all within the realm of each other. So we'll see what the lines look like, and other than that, I still think the top 10 are in a class of their own, and the bottom 8 are in a not so good class of their own. So long power rankings, but it's been a while since I made a video. I want to go more in depth this time, and hopefully you guys liked it. So this is Shoop Sports signing out, and I will see you later in the week for my picks video.